All right, it's that time again, Friday Night Frights. It is Friday night, and we are going to talk about aliens, drones, UFOs, Phil Schneider, and we're going to link it all together. So, on Reddit today, I noticed that an anonymous guy who had a master's degree was selected to oversee the nuclear submarine stuff. He was supposed to watch aerial phenomenon coming out of these threshold points, and there were 3 threshold points, one off the coast of California, one off the coast of Puerto Rico, and another one was somewhere out in the Pacific Ocean. Well, he said it became very alarming because in the last year and a half, ever since middle of 2023, about July, the aerial phenomena, or the vehicular crafts that were coming out of these threshold points, it was not random, and it was so prevalent that everybody was getting scared. He said all his military leaders, he said they were all on a need-to-know basis, and they didn't understand who was operating these things or what was operating them. But they noticed that they were surveilling military bases, which we've seen the last couple years. We've seen that Langley Air Force Base, Picatinny in New Jersey, Arsenal. We've seen a lot of military bases. The Pentagon has been surveilled by drones and stuff and mysterious aircrafts, and even the Pentagon leader was coming out and saying that they were coming off of a mothership, and some people were trying to say it was Iranian. Well, no, it doesn't appear to be any country related. I'm going to hold to my assertion that it's our technology. That's what I've been saying all along. Just like the Chinese spy balloons that the media was saying was Chinese, it wasn't Chinese. We're now finding that out. That it all, to me, appears to be our technology. But this anonymous guy who was had this master's degree and whatever he had, and was selected to look at these threshold points, he said that this was very alarming because he said the technology that was used is a technology that we do not understand. He said they were using electromagnetic energy to mask their identity. He said that they could come up as drones, they could come up as airplanes, they could come up as anything, and we wouldn't be able to tell the difference because they were using this electromagnetic energy to conceal their physical appearance. But that somehow using sonar technology with the nuclear submarines, that they could tell their true form deep underneath the surface. And he said these things are so deep that they're way below where the submarines are. So it's pretty alarming. And he said that when they would enter the water, they would enter at between a 75 and a 90 degree angle without losing a touch of velocity. So that's technology that we don't have any real comprehension of. You know, I've seen a silver disc in Germany, 2020. That's 4.5 years ago already. It's crazy. And I saw that hit in an estimated Mach 6 speed, where it left a vaporized light trail like a meteorite that lasted in the sky for about 4 seconds. But this all ties into, well, I will say one more comment before I hit my next topic here. So he said that this wasn't top secret military. It wasn't extraterrestrials, but he didn't know who it was, and he said that whoever's operating this stuff, they're surveilling us, and he said that's why everybody was getting really scared. And he said that whoever it was has been here a lot longer than us. Well, if it's not black budget military, and if it's not extraterrestrials, then who does that leave? Is there something else that we don't know that's hanging out there? So that ties me into my next topic of Phil Schneider. Now, some of you guys who run in the UFO circles know Phil Schneider quite well. He was murdered, I believe, back in 1995, if I'm not mistaken. And he was talking in conferences about a lot of the things he knew, and he talked about a lot of things. Eventually, he was murdered with a wire around his neck. I don't think the wire itself was found, but the injuries were consistent with a wire strangulation around his neck. And that's how a lot of truth tellers and whistleblowers have been murdered. They would be found strangled and hung up on a doorknob, like Chester Bennington of Lincoln Park, if you remember that lead singer. He was coming out about all the pedophilia and Hollywood Satanism that's been going on, and they got him, and he wasn't stopping talking about it, so they strangled him and hung him from a doorknob. That was very symbolic for him. a lot of people who are doing that have been found hung from doorknobs. It's very sick. I can't say that Phil Schneider was hung from a doorknob, but he was found strangled with a wire device. Now, a lot of the stuff that Phil Schneider was saying is that the United States government really knew about the existence of extraterrestrial entities since really the 1930s, when a group of banditos came across the Mexican border into, I think, New Mexico, and this military group chased them into a cave, and they found these airships in there, and these aliens, tall grays, making these clicking noises like bird chirps. Like when Phil Schneider came face to face with a tall gray, he said that there were short grays and tall grays. The short ones are 3 feet tall, the tall ones are 7 feet tall. And if you guys remember the movie Signs, I want to say it came out in about 2013, and Mel Gibson was in it, Joaquin Phoenix. And you remember that scene toward the end of close toward the end of the movie where they finally started showing the aliens, and it was a tall gray about 7 feet tall, and all the kids, it was in Mexico, and all the kids screamed in terror, and all these crop circles were happening all over the world. I almost kind of wonder if, like, we're not headed to that kind of a thing, and this movie was trying to warn us or something. But I've been saying all along that the government's preparing us for a false flag alien invasion, and that if they wanted to attack, they would have done it eons ago. But Phil Schneider came face to face with a tall gray in a cave in Sonora, New Mexico, I do believe. And Phil Schneider's one of the geologists who was hand-selected by the United States government to bore out these tunnels using a conflagration technique. They would melt the rock with lasers into like an agate material, like a shiny rock called agate, and they would powder it, and that powder was used to like seal around it and stuff, but it led to the formation of all these 2 and 4 lane highways. And he said it's not like as wide as a 2 and 4 lane highway is up here on the surface, but he said they're all over and they're all connected. So all these military bases are all connected with each other. There's not any road that's not connected with something. And he said it stretches all the way across America. And he said really this is going on all over the world. It's going on in Europe, Sweden, you name it, pretty much everywhere. He said it's connected to the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases. He said at the time, in 1995, that there were 133 of them in America. He said that's way too many. He said some of these were designed as our concentration camps because they're underground and people don't know about them. And he said that 100,000 kids go missing each year and 1 million adults, as a rough estimate, go missing each year. He said, where do you think they're going? He said some of them are going to the Hollywood elites as like adrenochrome and stuff, but it's not even just the satanic Hollywood elites like Sean Combs and all this stuff. It's the extraterrestrials. And he said that I believe he said it was the tall grays that would need to harvest the adrenochrome from a lot of these kids. Now, you can't really get adrenochrome from adults because our adrenal glands don't produce that drug cocktail the way that it happens in kids. But a lot of these people were missing in abduction experiments, and he said that even to Dwight Eisenhower had an agreement with the Greys that our government would allow the extraterrestrials to abduct and experiment on people, autopsy on them, genetically experiment, whatever, with human alien hybridization and all this stuff. And that was part of the agreement with our federal government back in, I believe it was the late 40s, or it could have been the 50s. I can't remember when Eisenhower was the president, but yeah, so Phil Schneider said a lot of things, and he said that when he came face to face with a tall 7-foot gray down in the cave system of Sonora, New Mexico, they smelled this deep stench of sulfur. And if you ever smell sulfur and you're underground and you hear these like bird chirps, those are the Greys communicating. He said that our language is very slow to them, but he said they speak really fast in these high-pitched, shrill chirp sounds, so it'll sound like a bird. He said if you ever hear that, he said, get the hell out right now, because he was attacked by one, and a 7-foot gray basically went like this around his body and somehow harnessed electromagnetic energy to shoot out what was like a laser, not really a laser, but like a charged particle beam of electromagnetic energy. and it opened Phil Schneider up basically in his midsection here, and he said it burnt all his toenails off on his left foot. It burnt the boot right off his foot. He said the only reason he survived is because one of the Green Berets saved his life and risked his life. That Green Beret soldier died trying to get him on that lift shaft to get him out of that tunnel. Now, he said that 66 people died in that attack, and with that attack on that alien base down there, basically the cattle mutilations stopped for a period of, I think it was 3 to 7 years afterward, because a lot of people were seeing cows getting mutilated, and it was being done by extraterrestrials, which we've known that for a long time. The government never came out and gave us an official narrative, but that's what it was. It was the tall grays doing it, basically. And maybe the short grays involved too, who knows, but it was definitely alien experimentation. They would cut their midsections out, and the hides would still be there, and it was just really grotesque stuff. So it just makes you wonder when the government agreed to let some humans get abducted by gray aliens, it's sad to think what happened to them, because they came out missing and a lot of these people never made it back. I mean, you're talking about 100,000 kids and 1 million adults each year. I mean, it's a real thing, and it's sad to think that there are human sacrifices that are agreed to with our government. We can't lose sight of that. It's really, really bad news. And it's still going to continue to go on. But one of the things Phil Schneider did talk about that I do think is important for you guys to know, and it actually lines up with what my friend Tanya Derenberger was saying with the Indrid Cold story. So if you go to my YouTube channel and you search Indrid Cold, you'll find 3 videos done by Tanya Derenberger. She was the daughter of Woody, or Woodrow Derenberger, who was the main contactee in the Indrid Cold alien saga, if you will, here in Parkersburg, West Virginia, back in November of 1966, 12 days after the Mothman mysteriously showed up in Point Pleasant, which is 30-some miles from Parkersburg. Now, Phil Schneider talked about an alien entity who crashed and landed here and basically was held hostage, in other words, by our federal government and the world's governments, by the name of Val Valiant Thor. And Tanya Derenberger mentions him in one of her books, and so does her dad, Woodrow. And Val Valiant Thor, he claimed that he was a Venusian. Now, Phil Schneider said he wasn't sure if he was a Venusian or if he was a Pleiadian. He was a humanoid. He looked like a human, but he was much more advanced. He had either 2 hearts or 1 giant heart. He had 1 giant lung. The blood vessels were much bigger. His blood was that of an octopus blood. I can't remember the name of it. I don't know if it was nitric oxide or whatever they said it was. Doesn't sound completely right, but he said his Valiant Thor's blood was that of an octopus, not of our traditional blood, and that his brain was 30 centimeters larger in circumference. He could speak 10 languages proficiently, but he would not shake your hand, and he would wear a spacesuit because we would introduce these bacterium that would be diseases to him and vice versa, him to us. So, precautions were taken, and he would not make physical contact like that. I think Phil Schneider claimed that maybe he got to speaking to Valiant Thor at some point. I can't remember. But my friend Tanya did mention Valiant Thor in the book because Indrid Cold had talked about him. And if you go back and you watch some of those videos about Indrid Cold's early life, it's really rather fascinating. I mean, if you believe in this stuff, there's a lot of stuff that connects here, and that's why I believe everything Phil Schneider's saying. I don't think he's lying about anything, and especially when you find out that he was murdered for what he was talking about, and he was in possession of these elements that weren't even listed on the periodic table, because they tell us that the periodic table has 105 elements, but we know there are more elements from other alien worlds. We know that. He was in possession of some of that stuff. So that's pretty much what I want to hit on in connection with Phil Schneider and the extraterrestrial topic of him boring down in the tunnels and coming face to face with a 7-foot gray. You see a 7-foot gray on the movie Signs with Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson's coming out and talking a lot of stuff. Pay attention to what he's saying. President Trump is now nominating him as director of Hollywood or something. So now he's coming out, and I think Trump wants to expose a lot of things. So the original guy I was talking about that said he saw these aerial aircrafts coming out at these threshold points, and he said they weren't extraterrestrial, and he said they weren't top secret military, but that they were able to change their appearance through electromagnetic energy. It's fascinating to think about, and it's actually really rather scary because it's all coming up in the last couple of years. So don't expect this stuff to die down. You know, I'm here just like you guys are. I'm trying to find the truth of what's going on. Believe what you will, that's fine. I'm not here to get in arguments. Everybody's got different opinions, I understand. Some people think I'm cuckoo, batshit crazy on this stuff, and other people, they know I'm telling the truth on what I think is the truth. So we're all here in it together. We're going to try to find out what's going on before it's too late. But just keep in mind, I said last year that the government was going to try to fake a false flag alien invasion. So stay tuned. It's not going to die down. It's only going to get more interesting. And President Trump is about to hit his inauguration here in just a couple days. So it's about to get really interesting. So thanks if you've stayed tuned to this video. I appreciate it. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe and share. All the usual stuff. And we're going to try to keep digging on the truth and try to find out what's really going on. That way we can help to save some of you guys before it does get too late, if something does hit the fan, you know, and we'll see what happens. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate you. And until next week on Friday Night Frights, this is Moving Under Fire saying Godspeed, everybody.